Hi, I'm Kelly Spoon, a math faculty member at Mesa College. I'm going to tell you guys about one of my favorite changes I made in my years of teaching, which is flipping my classroom.
If you don't know what a flipped classroom is, it's basically flipping the traditional classroom model where you deliver content via lecture in class, and then you have students go work on homework and other projects outside of class, and having it the other way around. So outside of class, students are watching the videos or reading to get informed about what the content is, and then they're coming to class to actually practice. So why did I flip my classroom? Part of it was what you see on the right. Our course outline of record for statistics is a mile long. There's a ton of content to cover and not nearly enough time in a 16-week semester to get it done. So flipping my classroom really cut down on the amount of time I got off topic on lecture and allowed me to just cut to the chase and post quick videos getting through all the topic. So the other reason I did this was because I kept going to workshops where they were showing me fun activities to be doing during class to really engage my students. But with my traditional lecture, there just wasn't time to do this and cover all the content. I couldn't even cover the content as it was. So flipping my classroom allowed me to start using all of these activities that really engaged my students in the learning process. So now that we know what it is and why I did it, let's talk about how this actually happened in my classes. So I did a lot of iterations over the years, but basically it started this way. We would do a preview on the Thursday before the weekend, some preview activity that would spark interest. They'd watch the videos over the weekend, and they'd come back that class right after, usually on a Tuesday, and practice the material in class together with a group. So I'm going to address a concern I know a lot of you probably have, and it was one that I definitely had when I first started this experiment. And that is, what if students don't come prepared for class? What if they don't watch my videos? So I dealt with this in two ways. The first was, before class, I had a quiz due on Canvas that was on the content that was covered in the lecture videos. Some of my classes needed a little more support than this. So in those classes where my students were not as incentivized intrinsically to watch the videos, I would check their lecture notes in class during the activity that we were doing. So my videos happened to coincide with a set of lecture notes that I've created for the class. So I would just ask them to flip to a certain page and then give them points for having completed the lecture notes. But that still doesn't address what you do when your students haven't done the work, right? They may have lost points on that quiz or that lecture note check, but now they're maybe left out, especially if it's a review day, on working on the activity that everyone else is doing. So in those cases, I would run through a Kahoot or just do a quick debrief, making sure everybody had at least a base amount of knowledge so that they could get started on the day's activity or worksheet. And what do my students think of this? Well, when I polled my students during the second semester of this experiment, which was now over 2 years ago, 83% of them liked the format. In fact, most of them had overwhelmingly positive things to say about the amount of time we were spending in class getting to practice the material. So some of the other impacts of flipping my classroom were that I was able to get to all of the content and do so in a way where my students had a better understanding. They had higher exam scores and my success rates increased. Additionally, my students just became more self-sufficient. They became independent learners. I saw less students in office hours and less students sending me emails asking for clarification. They knew that they could go to the videos and rewatch them at any time. There was one negative impact of my flipped classroom. I actually saw a slight increase in my withdrawal rate from previous semesters. Students weren't used to the format and didn't feel comfortable with it, and so some of them dropped, probably 3 or 4 per class, which is more than my usual none at the beginning for those first 10 weeks. So if you're considering trying this, here are some tips that I could give you. 1, don't do the entire class at once. Try just flipping a single lesson and seeing how it goes. Create your own videos. Students really appreciate hearing your voice and knowing that you're the one telling them what they need to know. Figure out a way to hold their students accountable for watching those videos or prepping before class. And make sure that that class time is meaningful. And by meaningful, I mean that students are interacting with each other in some sort of group setting, hopefully creating something new and exciting. The picture to the left is my students creating their own lesson about graph transformations in my Math 96 using Flipgrid, which I know one of the other panelists talked about in her video. If you're wondering how the switch to remote learning has impacted my flipped classroom, well, the flipped classroom has made this very easy for me. One, I already have all the videos ready for my students to watch. And then in our Zoom sessions, we still start with a quick Kahoot, making sure everybody's on the same page, do a debrief on what the material was that they were supposed to have watched and understood, answering questions that they might still have. And then we work in breakout rooms on whatever the activity or worksheet is for that particular day. I want to give a big thank you to Jen and Denise for following up with me about 1,000 times to get me to make this. If you have any questions for me about teaching math or just a flipped classroom, you can email me at kspoon@stccd or find me on Twitter at Kelly M. Spoon.